Hi, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. Today we're looking at this Austrian pine. I've had this tree for about probably 18 years. It started as a nursery tree growing in the front garden, and it was slowly pruned until this is it today. So I'm going to spin the tree around, have a look at it. Yeah, so that's it. Every tree has its good points and every tree has its bad points. This tree has some good points and it has some bad points. So let's have a look at those and decide what we're going to do with this tree. So this is the root base of the tree. I've been bare rooting this tree every time I repot it. It's a good way to look at the roots. You can examine them, straighten out roots that are curving the wrong direction in an effort to get a radial root base. And you can see the root base isn't too bad. And the roots are getting some nice bark on them, and the trunk's getting a bit of flare down below, or down lower here. One thing that's kind of been bothering me is that I think I have the tree planted too high in the pot. So by exposing these surface roots, normally when you expose surface roots, it adds to the feelings of stability for the tree. Kind of gives it that feeling it's gripping the ground. But on this tree, I think it's a little high, and it's actually giving the feeling of instability, especially, you know, when you have a root coming out in the air like that. It almost looks like it was firmly planted and the soil's eroded around it, and it gives it that look of a temporary feeling that, you know, eventually the soil's going to be washed away and the tree will tip over and die. So I think when you're exposing roots, it's important to keep every root kind of firmly in the soil, so that, you know, you don't have one sticking out, and it gives a better feeling of stability. So I think this tree, if the soil was raised up to, you know, maybe this level, to this level, I think the tree would look a little more firmly planted in the ground. The other option would be to remove that root, which is maybe a possibility, but as you'll see later, we're going to examine some full-size Austrian pines and look at the root base of them. So I'm thinking maybe we want to keep that root and just plant it a little deeper. Okay, so let's go up from the roots to the trunk of the tree. It has some pretty nice bark on it. If you look up here, it's starting to get, you know, some fine cracking. It's got a lot of lichen on it, and again, I'm not sure if that's, you know, a really good feature or a bad feature, because it kind of obscures the bark, but as the bark flakes off, as the tree grows, the lichen falls off with it, and so I'm going to leave it on. I don't think it's, you know, too badly interfering with the texture of the bark. The trunk isn't perfectly round. You can see it's more of an oval shape, and that's mainly the distribution of the roots that causes that, and the distribution of the foliage up top. So, you know, if you have a perfectly even distribution of roots at the base and a perfectly even distribution of foliage at the top, you're going to have a round trunk. If it's out of round like this, it means that there's a vigorous root on this side feeding a vigorous branch, and you're getting the trunk swelling at one point. So, you know, it's not too bad, but it is something we can, you know, work towards correcting in the future. When I first got this tree, it was very rapidly grown as a nursery tree, and the bark on it was very coarse, great big plates. It was, it didn't look miniature at all. It looked like a rapidly growing tree. So what I did is I went and I flaked off all the bark on the tree and got a fairly smooth trunk. And I took it right down to like almost, removing almost all the bark. So it was just sort of like a pink trunk. It was just, yeah, it was sort of a pinkish color. And it took about 2 years before the bark started cracking again and getting its mature color to it. But I think the end result was worth it. The bark has sort of an even texture all the way up the tree, whereas before it had like this thick coarse bark here, and then the newer bark didn't blend with it at all. So we've got pretty good, the bark's not bad on it. Next we're going to look at the branches. They're pretty nicely placed. You know, if this is the front of the tree, we've got our branches, our lowest branch to the left, our second branch to the right, our third branch at the back, our next branch doesn't quite copy, but it goes to the right, then left, back, and then right, left, front, back, towards the crown here. But they're not bad. I mean, there's nothing you'd want to prune away or get rid of at this point in time with the tree. The other thing with the branches is that they're pretty good when viewed from above. There's no branches that are blocking out any of the other branches. They've kind of all got their place in the sun, which is good, which means the branches will continue to grow nice and strong. So the reason I'm looking at this tree is that it's, you know, to me it's not too bad a looking pine tree, but I think there's some things we can work towards fixing on it. One of those being, if you look at the tree, it's a slanting tree. It doesn't have a whole lot of slant to it, but it does slant. So the apex is offset from the base of the roots. But the tree is very symmetrical. The foliage on this side is almost the same as the foliage on the other side. So if you're going to have that kind of foliage, you want an upright tree. And that gives it that real stability, look of stability. But on a slanting tree, you want to balance the foliage. So the tree's slanting over towards the right, so we want more foliage on the left, and that gives it balance. If you have symmetrical foliage on a slanting tree, it gives the feeling of it's going to tip over. Whereas if we have more weight or foliage on this side, it counteracts the slant of the tree and gives it a feeling of stability. So what's happening with this tree is this branch over here is growing really nicely, really nice ramification, but it's getting a little strong compared to the branch, where am I pointing? To the branch on this side, on the left side. So what we want to do is we want to bring in the foliage on this side of the tree. Keep the foliage on the left side heavier so the tree looks balanced. So this tree, up until this point, it's been shaped purely by pruning. It hasn't been wired at any time. You can see, let me show you this pruning point here first. This branch was shortened quite dramatically about 5 years ago. I cut the branch off. There was a bud on the bottom of the branch, and I developed that into the new branch leader. I've done the same thing on this side. It's not quite as successful at this point. You can see the branch was growing, and then I picked a downward facing bud and pruned off the branch to that point. It's healing over, but it's got a pretty nasty scar there right now. That will heal over completely eventually. This branch has always been a little weaker than the branch on the right hand side. It was a younger branch that I developed out a bit. So we're going to work on that. The back branches on the tree, they're a little short. They could be, brought out more to balance the forward growth of the tree. The foliage is a little heavy on the front side of the tree and it's a little light on the back side. I think that's my fault. I was giving this side of the tree the sunshine more than the back of the tree, so it was facing south on the bench. So this year I've turned it around to get more light to go to the back of the tree and try and increase the vigor and health on this side. So we're gonna try and get it, more ramification and grow this side of the tree out more, and at the same time try and keep the front of the tree a little shorter. So from the side here we get a better balance of foliage. Okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to go on location and check out some full-size Austrian pines. Check out how they grow again, their structure, what they look like, and get some ideas for the future styling of our tree. I also took some photos of my Austrian pine we're going to be working on, and I've made some diagrams showing the future styling of the tree, its position in the pot, what we intend on doing with this tree in the future. So we'll check out that right now. So we're on location in a graveyard and we're checking out this Austrian pine. It's kind of a damp day today, so the bark isn't really showing up that well, but let's go in and take a look at some of the details of the tree. We'll start at the root base of the tree, and you can see the roots are kind of going as a crossing root and coming out at some funny angles. Not your typical perfect radial root base, but it does have some surface roots coming out, although the trunk kind of comes pretty straight down and not a lot of surface roots showing. And that's kind of typical for a lot of Austrian pines. They don't get the great big buttress trunk at the base. Yeah, and you can see the bark. It's quite deep and got a lot of texture to it. It's really nice. And it in the sun, when it dries out, there's a drier section over here. You can see it gets really nice sort of black and white stripes as it goes up. And speaking of up, let's check out the tree. Here we go, way up. And you can see the branch structure. It's a pretty basic tree, this. Not a lot of really unusual branches, but there are some. They're fairly structured. So this is sort of a tree that's fairly close to the style of the Austrian pine I have as a bonsai. So it's kind of a good example to maybe copy some details off of. You can see the branch thicknesses basically follow the rules. Your lower branches are the thickest ones, but there's a lot of exceptions. Our lowest 3 branches there are quite thick, and however there's a even thicker one up top there, and this one's fairly thick. So in general it follows that principle of the higher up branches get thinner, but not exactly. So that's kind of good, because we don't have to be too rigid in the tree. We don't have to follow the rules exactly, just like nature doesn't follow them exactly. Here's a couple of Austrian pines that are a little older. There's a twin trunk one and a single trunk back there, so we'll go take a look at those. Here's a twin trunk Austrian pine. You can see the branches go fairly straight. They don't have a lot of movement to them, and that's pretty typical of a lot of Austrian pines. They kind of come out 90 degrees to the trunk and continue to grow that way. They droop a little bit. And you can see the crown is getting quite flat. It's typical of a mature Austrian pine. You get the flat top and slowly the foliage on the bottom part of the tree starts to die. This one's got really nice bark. Let's go have a look at it. Here's the base of the tree. And again, you can't see a lot of, strong surface roots coming out into the soil. It just basically flares out a bit and goes into the ground. You can see the old bark, really nice. Yeah, some nice texture. Let's have a look up at the tree. Zoom out a bit. Yeah. The single trunk one here is got some nice bark too. Most of the lower branches are dead, but you can see the structure of it. There's a little foliage on the top, but not much. I think this one's doomed. I think she'll be dead in a couple of years, but you can see the branches anyway. There's one that comes pretty well straight out 90 degrees. Most of the others follow that kind of pattern. There's not too many drooping branches. There's a few, but yeah, pretty straight branches. They fan out nicely. And yeah, you can see the growth is mainly at the top now, and it's a pretty flat top. Our last Austrian pine we're going to look at is one that's not growing so much in the open, but more in a forest. Again, at the base, you can see pretty well no surface roots on this one. It just grows up out of the soil. The bark's a little not so bleached by the sun, so it's more of a brown color. And not a lot of growth on it. There's some way up top there. There's an old dead branch growing out here that's was quite vigorous at one time, but the other trees have grown up around it and it's died off. There's a lot of dead branches up top here, so you can kind of see the length of them, what they look like as they die off. And then the last thing we want to look at is some of the older branches on the main trunk. Where am I? They've died off and rotted away, and it's just left kind of a dimple or a hole. And that's kind of typical as you go up the tree. You can see all the dead wood. So that's about it. We've looked at our Austrian pines growing, and I think it's time to go back and apply some of these ideas to our bonsai tree. Okay, so it's time to actually do some work on this tree. We've looked at full-size Austrian pines. So right now it's early July. So everything we want to do to the tree, we want to do at the right time, and we don't want to hurt the health of the tree. So I just want to mention that if you look on YouTube, look up Ryan Neal. He's got some great lectures and demonstrations on YouTube, and he's probably worked on more pines than most people will ever even see in their lifetime. So he knows what he's talking about. He's done the work to trees. So check out Ryan Neal on YouTube, and you'll get some great tips on taking care of pines. So our first objective with this tree is we wanted to reduce the apex on this side. So we have more foliage on this side of the crown and less on this side. So let's see what we can do. If we prune this branch off, we're going to lose part of that branch, but there is, if we dig in here, there is another branch kind of behind it growing from the same point. So we could remove this part of the branch, which would shorten the profile of the tree, and we still have a branch back here to replace it with a shorter one. So we'll do that. We'll cut that branch off. Okay, so we've gone in, we've removed this portion of the branch. It has another branch coming off here that'll be our new branch leader, if I can point to that, right in here. And it's shorter. It's not overshadowing the branch underneath, so it's a good place to prune there. And this branch will be growing more in this direction between the two lower ones underneath it, so it'll have its own light. Let's have a look at the profile of the tree. Yeah, we've definitely shifted some of the mass of the apex towards the left, which is what we want to do. Now the next thing I would do is see this branch here. We've got some strong side buds on it and a long leader coming straight out. So we can take that leader off, and one of these side buds will become our new leader for the branch, and that'll also shorten the mass on this side of the tree. So we're going to do that now. So we'll go in and we'll remove that once I find it. And you just want to, probably out of focus here, but you just check for buds underneath. No, there's none there, so we can just cut that right off. I probably missed that, but okay, so we've cut that branch leader off. It's gone. Have a look at the profile again. Focus it. Yeah, so we've reduced the mass on that side of the crown quite a bit, and the tree still looks good. Better, in fact. So the next branch, if we come down to this one, it's sticking out a little far. Where am I? Sorry. This branch is sticking out a little far. So if we can prune that off and shorten it back to here, we'll get a tighter triangle down here. So that's what we want to take off, is that tip. That tip. Right there. Okay? So here we go. We're just going to look for buds. Sorry. There's nothing really, there's no back budding or anything there. We could wait for the back bud, but we have an upward bud here that we can train as a new branch leader. And it's got more sun because we removed the branch that was shadowing it out from the crown. So, I think what we're going to do, let's see. So I think we'll just, instead of cutting that right off and replacing it way back here, I think we'll just prune the tip off. We've got some healthy needles around the growing tip there, and hopefully we'll get a bud in there. It's getting more light now, so we'll probably get a bud in there. So we'll just take the tip off for now. So here we go. We'll keep some of the old needles. There we go. And again, from our front view, we've shortened that branch, so we're getting a tighter triangle on this side and a larger angle on this side. Less foliage mass here, more here. So the next branch, it's in line with our triangle, but it's a little dense. So, and we've got a lot of upward growth there. So let's see what we can do about thinning that out. So this next branch we're going to tackle, we've got more light to this branch, but this branch is in a good position, but it's kind of blocking out part of this branch. So the main part of this branch wants to grow out in this direction, and this part of the branch is kind of shading out this lower branch. So what we'll want to do is keep some of this growth back in this direction and remove some of the forward growth. especially our upward growth when seen from the front here. So that's what we'll do. So when you're pruning the branches on a pine tree, you want to look at the structure from underneath and decide what to keep and what to get rid of. So let's have a look here. So we've got a lot of branching here, which is a little cluttered, and that's what we're going to thin out. So we want to keep our branches that are growing parallel and remove a lot of the upward growing tips. So we're going to go in and prune that up and do a lot of thinning and try and get it in shape. So our bottom branch here has got a lot going on. It's getting a nice fan shape to the branch. However, we want to shorten it. So if we look at the front view, we want to get rid of down to about here. So all this has to come off. So we don't just want to randomly cut it off. We want to kind of keep a branch structure. So this one, we've got a small bud here, so we can prune the tip off that, or reduce it dramatically, which I think we'll just do for now. We'll keep some sap flow going to that branch tip. Here we go. We'll try and get in between the needles here. There we go. And this one is kind of crowded out by this one, the other branch, so I think we're just going to remove that one. It's not really, it's kind of getting too crowded in there. So yeah, we just want to take that one right off. So here we go. That one's gone. And then this branch, we've got two buds coming out here, so we can take that tip off too. And those buds will grow. And that should shorten it. We've got quite a large branch off the back. This one has two buds. We could prune the tip off that, but it's kind of getting shaded out a bit. So we'll leave that for now. This one, we don't want it to be competing with our main branch, so we want it a little shorter. So we do have some branching back here, so we can take the tip off that. So here we go. Tips off that. Now let's have a look at our profile. Have we done what we want to do? Let's focus it here. I think so. If we look at the angle, it's tighter than the angle on this side. So we've kind of done with pruning what we want to do. We've reduced the foliage mass on the right hand side and the crown, and the left hand side is fuller, which gives the tree a more balanced appearance. And I hope you can see that it looks a little prettier. When it comes to repotting, we probably could get away with repositioning the tree in the pot. I could go in, remove the soil on this side of the tree, shift it over, and fill soil on that side. And it probably wouldn't hurt the tree. I have to decide if I want to do that now, or is it better to wait till we repot it in spring. I don't think it would hurt the tree to do it now, but I think we're going to wait for now. So the tree's a little off center in the pot, which, you know, you don't want it exactly on the center, but it's a little too far offset towards the left hand side right now. So we probably aren't going to touch the tree, its position in the pot for now. We'll wait till next spring, and we'll do a video on repotting it. So I think the next step is probably, I think we've got to balance out some of this foliage. It's not too bad now, but some of the branches have a little more foliage than others. So, as Ryan Neal says, look for your weakest significant branch, which is this one. Check out the foliage density on it, and then match it with the other trees. So you can see right away that the crown is heavier than this branch. This branch has more foliage than this branch. This branch has more foliage than this branch. So we're going to remove some of the needles on that to even it out a bit. We'll remove all our bottom growing needles and just do a little thinning. So we'll check in when that's all done. When we're removing foliage or needles from a pine tree, I always use scissors and I cut them off short. So I go in and I just trim them off, not right to the base of the branch, but I leave a little bit of the needles on. And they turn brown and they fall off fairly quickly. So that's our first step. We're just going to remove all the needles growing in the downward direction. Being careful not to remove downward buds like that, which we want to keep. Okay, so that's what I'm doing now. You can see these ones are quite long here. Get rid of those. I'm pointing the camera in the right direction. There we go. Okay, so we'll check in when it's all done. Okay, so we've removed all the downward facing needles. Now you might ask, why do we remove the downward facing needles? Well, there's two reasons. One is aesthetics. The tree looks good with the branches nice and clean underneath and the foliage on top. It's very similar to what you see in nature. All the pine needles go upwards towards the light and the bottom of the branch is pretty well bare. The second reason is a horticultural reason. The needles that are underneath the branch or facing downward don't get much light. They're kind of shaded, and by removing them, first of all, they're not very efficient because they're not getting much light. By removing them, it thins the tree out, so the needles that do get the light, the upward facing needles, get more light, so they're not shadowed out by these downward facing needles in the branches above that aren't very efficient. So we're kind of giving all the efficient needles more light, which will actually increase the vigor of the tree. So we've pretty well done all the work we can do in this tree at this time. Again, we want to reposition it in the pot, move it more central to the pot, but we'll do that in spring when we repot it. We've reduced our foliage mass on this side of the tree as much as we realistically can at this point in time. We're going to encourage the foliage mass on the left side of the tree to grow out a little more and get a little more denser, especially in some of the, that secondary branch up there, which we'll give it nice light and try and get more ramification in that. And yeah, so the tree looks more balanced now. It just sort of sits better. And yeah, that's about all we can do for now. The new growth on it has almost hardened off. It's still a little soft and a little greener than the old growth. So once that hardens off fully, we're going to begin fertilizing the tree again and get lots of energy in it for its bud push in spring. And then we'll try getting more ramification and shorter needles. Okay, so Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. See you next time.